This past week, the movie world and his millions of fans are still grieving over the death of Robert Redford, a Hollywood star who will always be remembered. He ended an amazing journey at the age of 89. What happened to Robert Redford is not just another sad part of his already sad life. It's like an earthquake, a cut so deep into the heart of humanity that it leaves millions of people gasping for air. The world is watching from afar as his body is being prepared for a private funeral in the mountains of Utah. There will be no red carpet or cameras, just his family and close friends. There are a lot of tributes to her in Hollywood, but one voice stands out from the rest. It's Meryl Streep, the co-star and friend, the 40-year partner who shocked everyone with a goodbye so painful and sad that it could break anyone's heart and made everyone cry at that very moment. Please click the like button before we start this trip as a sign of respect for the legend who gave the world everything and has now been cruelly taken away by time. As everyone mourns the death of Robert Redford, it is important to remember that this Hollywood legend did not start out as a winner, but as a loser. His body was crippled by polio, and he was stuck in a narrow bed. His young spirit was dragged into shadows that no one would ever see. As if fate were already seeing how much pain a legend's heart could handle, the shadows pressed down like a silent judgment. He was born on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica to Charles and Martha. He grew up in Van Nuys as an only child during the Depression and learned too soon how fragile life could be. In those years, he would later say, "I thought I might never walk again, but my mother wouldn't let me give up." Every night, Martha massaged his sore legs while whispering words of courage into his ear. She taught him that resilience wasn't a shout of success, but a quiet refusal to give up. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, the boy who would one day be in charge of the screen had to learn how to defeat fear. He became angry and restless, and he joined a rough group of people in Los Angeles. He fell into nights of risky behavior that were more dangerous than he realized. He told her years later, "I was always looking for something I couldn't name." The cops stopped him one night for making trouble. There was only a warning at the end, but the memory stayed. His strict instructions from his father kept him from falling off a cliff where he might have died too soon. He kept himself steady with sketchbooks, the open sky, and the beat of sports. He even warmed up tennis great Pancho Gonzalez with a stick. At the Los Angeles Tennis Club, a brief spark that made him think he might fit somewhere other than the forgotten parts of his busy city. But in 1955, when he was only 18, he was hit with a blow that would make every victory after that seem small. His mother, Martha, who had once rubbed his paralyzed legs to life, went into surgery and never came back. What started as hope turned into an infection. It was the end of the light in his world. For the son she left behind, the loss was complete, a tear deeper than any sickness could have made. His father never got married again, and the house became empty, with her voice echoing in every room. Redford would say later, "It left me with a void I could never fill." As he grew up, became famous, and had successes that should have made him feel like he had won, but instead made him feel like he had a wound that no amount of success could fix. Edges that cut like blades were carved in the mid-1950s. A sports grant at the University of Colorado helped him for a while, but he quickly lost it because he drank too much. He felt like the world had slammed a door on him before he learned how to open it because he felt bad about going too early. He almost gave up, but he chose to go into hiding instead of giving up. In his early 20s, he traveled through France, Spain, and Italy, living off of scraps and drawing, painting, and walking for miles under strange skies until the noise inside him quieted down. He admitted that perseverance isn't usually loud when you look back. It's still moving forward, when there is every reason to be afraid. When he went back to New York in his mid-20s, he brought scars, tools, a strong confidence in art, discipline learned on the courts and trails, and a promise that he would not give up when the shadows came back. Instead, he would meet them with work. It wasn't a myth that was smoothed out by legend that made the man we mourn today. It was a childhood shaped by illness, a heart rearranged by grief, near-fatal failures that almost ended him, and an awakening earned only through exile, struggle, and the lonely drive to start over. The world saw Robert Redford's move to New York in the late 1950s as a sign of ambition, but beneath the neon lights was a young man who had already been through illness, loss, and shame. At age 22, he still felt the pain of his mother's death and the shame of losing a scholarship. He walked those wet streets not with the confidence of a young man, but with the heavy load of having to stay alive. At Pratt, he held onto paintbrushes as if they could save him. At the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, he took a chance and went on stage. Acting wasn't a gift. It was a hard climb. By the age of 24, he was barely making ends meet with small jobs on TV shows like The Twilight Zone, Maverick, and Perry Mason. He later said it wasn't exciting. It was just survival. Just plain. Getting through life came with irony. His first curse was the face that would one day rule Hollywood. Directors turned him down because they thought he was too pretty. He would later say it was like being in a golden cage where no one thought you belonged. He fought so that people would see him as a person, not a mask. Then, freedom came in 1963, in Barefoot in the Park by Neil Simon, which is a play on Broadway. At age 27, he finally showed the wit, timing, and quiet sensitivity that people didn't like about him. Every night, tin. The cheers were more than just noise. It was justice done. They saw me for the first time. He thought about it years later. Not just what I looked like, Hollywood called from that stage. Small parts turned into major roles. Soon, after being kicked out, the boy was making a name for himself in movie theaters. But the pain of being turned down never went away. Instead, it turned into the secret fire that drove every decision. The reason he later took charge as a director. The very beginning of Sundance. The irony is almost cruel as we remember him and mourn his death. One of the people who gave the world independent opinions had been shut down by the smallest decision. He only had that beauty. From dim TV screens to Broadway's bright lights, Redford showed that he wasn't just a fake star, but an artist who fought for every inch. What started out as a way to stay alive turned into the start of a meteoric rise. What the world now knows as a legend began in the dark, in silence, and in pain. Robert Redford's rise to the top of Hollywood was like a bright light. But behind the fame, there were wounds that the loud crowds couldn't see, private fights that were carved into the very core of his fame. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, he seemed impossible to reach. He was one of the most bankable stars in the world, and his roles as the Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Johnny Hooker in The Sting, Bob Woodward in All the President's Men, and the loving partner in The Way We Were will live on in movie history. These parts could have made him immortal on their own, but with each applause, chains of beauty and expectation tightened around him. He said that the face that millions of people loved was never a pure gift, but a curse. Casting directors turned him down because he was too pretty, and he could feel the doubt even at his 8. Was he more than just pretty and having golden hair? Later, he said, "It was a golden cage, and you're inside it, but no one thinks you belong." His voice was bitter, like a man who was always fighting to be seen as more than a mask. Even winning meant he had to show proof, which made him fight doubt like a shadow over and over again. When The Great Gatsby fell even though he was there, it hurt more than reviews could describe. The people saw it as a slip-up. For him, the fact that a golden boy could never fail was a harsh judgment, but he refused to go back. He picked harder paths instead, putting all of his energy into All of the President's Men, where film gave way to reality instead of escape, where entertainment gave way to fun. It cost a lot. Some people said he was too serious about himself. The crowds moved on, but he stood still. He said that movies have a duty to show truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. He carried that belief with him like a soldier carrying scars that can't be seen. The hardest thing for him was when he had to work behind the camera for regular people. Some people in Hollywood laughed at the idea that a good-looking main man could ever be in charge. There were eyes watching him every day, ready for him to fall. But what came out was a triumph, a powerful meditation on grief that broke the silence and won him the Oscar for Best Director. Redford saw the Oscar as more than just praise. It was proof of his innocence and a long-awaited release from suspicion. The proof that he was more than just a hero. He was a very deep narrator. He kept going because he was hungry. In 1981, he started Sundance, a fragile dream that was laughed at by critics and was dying of lack of money. His faith and sacrifice were the only things that kept it going. There were nights when he thought he was going to fail, but he kept going, not for himself, but for those who weren't being heard, to build the stage he had once dreamed of. He gave up happiness, wealth, and even friendship, and had to live alone like a man who refused easy ease so that others could come into the light. In this way, Redford's golden age was never really bright. It was both brilliant and painful. The prison of beauty, the heavy weight of expectation, the weariness of always having to prove himself, and the loneliness of making a fragile dream a safe haven. The world saw victory. He went through a lot. In that fight, his legend began not as a man who lived for fame, but as someone who made scars into a legacy. Now that people are sad, the truth rings out loud and clear. People will always remember a star, but what will last is the artist who showed that even at the top, greatness comes from fire, not ease. It breaks my heart to think that even legends, no matter how great or long their lives were, can't escape the cruel end of time. Robert Redford died on September 16, 2025, at the age of 89. The news sent shockwaves around the world, as if the ground had broken. There had been no alerts, hospital VG, LLs, or quiet goodbyes. He had just a few days before talked about Sundance, unfinished scripts, and stories that he swore would one day be made into movies. At one point, Robert Redford seemed to be ageless, a Hollywood landmark that would never change. The next moment, there was cold, cruel silence. For millions, sadness came on quickly and deeply, but the shock hit Meryl Streep like a knife to the heart. "I think I'm still in denial," she said in a whisper. For hours afterward, her voice was shaking. She was sitting in a makeup chair when she heard the words that broke her heart. "He is no longer with us." It was a story to people who didn't know about it. In her mind, it was the end of 40 years of faith, friendship, and company that had helped her through life's storms. She cried out, "It feels like the air is gone out of the room." In 1985, their story began in the vast skies of Out of Africa. They made one of the most memorable love stories in movie history. His hunter and her baroness were two souls united by love against the endless African sky. Only a few of those things grew off-screen. Not scandal or short-lived love, but something more.